through my own personal passion to support other women entrepreneurs, TC started the first ever Founders Fund in 2019, which we basically challenged successful entrepreneurs and brought them together and said, what are you doing to pay your success forward? Can you contribute the currency of time and offer to help mentor some of these budding entrepreneurs? Or can you offer the currency of money and help to fund some of these entrepreneurs? And so with that, we were able to not only fund 5 companies, but support over 200 women identifying entrepreneurs across the country, gain access to mentorship, resources, and funding for their business. And I think what's really cool about why that sort of blew up bigger than anything I ever imagined is because I'm confident that we all have, as entrepreneurs, inherently in our DNA, this passion to want to help others succeed. And so now the Founders Fund is its own separate social enterprise and company. So I guess technically I'm the founder of the Founders Fund and TC. So TC is my first business, but I've always thought about being an entrepreneur. I guess you could say technically in my childhood, I was a bit of an entrepreneur. I was always selling things in yard sales that I wasn't supposed to sell, like my toys and stuff like that, that my parents would spend what limited money we had on and that kind of thing. But it's my first real business, I guess you could say. I think a lot of entrepreneurs can empathize though. Once you start one business, your brain never stops. You constantly just want to start all the businesses and it's hard to control yourself. So the reason why I started Tea's Tea is because I became a certified tea sommelier to help create one of the biggest tea programs in Toronto at the Shangri-La Hotel. And when I learned about tea, I was actually a professional wine sommelier in hospitality as well. And when I was learning about the world of tea, my passion naturally kind of shifted a bit because when you think of wine, you have red grapes and white grapes, and from there you have countless of varietals. With tea, it's the exact same thing. A lot of people don't realize that all tea comes from the exact same plant, but the difference is how it's harvested, the region, the climate, the soil conditions, it all affects the final product. So it's a very unexpected but natural passion that kind of evolved. And let's just face it, it's a lot easier to start a tea business than a wine business. So I was blending tea out of my tiny condo in Toronto. Again, it was more of like a creative outlet. And I knew that I had to have a bit of a differentiator because, you know, there's a David's Tea in every shopping mall. There's tea everywhere. It's nothing unique per se. And so I was very intentional about like making the brand and our story unique from day one. And that's how we kind of have woven in the women's wellness and the women-centric messaging. That's what we do. A few things that were funny from when I first started my business. First of all, I had no clue what I was doing, let's face it. And I think that naivety is actually what helped propel my eventual success because I had no clue what I was getting myself into, so I could only go up. I couldn't get in the weeds worrying about problems that I didn't even know existed, if that made sense. So when trying to make Tea's Tea different in the beginning, so keep in mind this is like 23-year-old Sheena, like not 32-year-old Sheena, like TC's 6 years old now. I thought I'm gonna make tea sexy. And so my whole branding was how can I make tea sexy? And so I had very sexy, provocative names for my teas. I would pack them with like hot pink feather boas instead of bubble wrap to like protect the canisters from knocking into each other. And I remember like in the era of like early YouTube influencers, you know, there were all sorts of influencers that were willing to take your product for free and do a video review. And that was great for like brand awareness. It's great for SEO. It was way more easier to do it then than it is now. And so I sent some free product to a tea expert to try it. And to this day, this video exists on the internet and it kills me, but it's this like bright pink fuchsia box. And basically the YouTuber is like, this tea is so confusing. I don't know why they want to make sexy tea. I just want tea that makes me feel good. And there's there's a feather boa. Why is there a boa in my box? And you see these feathers like flying around. And she's like, now I have to go vacuum my carpet. And I just remember watching that video thinking like, I am not in branding, clearly. I might need to pivot a little bit and change my model. But that feedback was incredibly telling is ultimately, no, nobody needs their tea to be sexy. People just want their tea to make them feel good. And it was that was a critical moment where I knew I needed to do a big brand shift. So my business is in one of the most competitive spaces. Like I said, there's tea stores everywhere. It's not that hard to find. In fact, I'll leave this person unnamed, but I once had a meeting with a former founder and CEO of one of the biggest tea companies that initially started in Canada. And you can probably guess who that is. And when I sat down in front of them expecting it to be a mentor opportunity, they were like, "You're way too late into the tea game. Like, you're wasting your time. You probably won't gain traction, but if you want a job at my company, here you go." And so I thought, wow, maybe I've really made a big mistake here. But I decided that it was worth going all in on in terms of like my own belief and passion to succeed. And I was willing to put whatever capital I could scrape by. Like, we've done Kickstarter campaigns. I've had friends that have like given me short-term loans that I've paid back, that sort of thing. I've invested in inventory that I didn't even know would sell, because I knew that my business was bigger than tea. It was about the mission that we were trying to support in the process, and that was to help women and improve the lives of women through the charities and organizations that we represented. And so I knew that with strategic storytelling, that our customers were not only investing in tea when they were buying Tea's tea, but they were investing in other women. And I think that having that huge differentiator early on helped us navigate a very crowded space. I remember my first sale like yesterday. Yeah, I really do. Like, if we're talking about first sale, it doesn't include your friends and family. Her name is Cindy. She's based in Alberta. She's the very first customer that I had no clue who she was. And I was so excited. I actually told her she was my first customer. And so she was so honored to be my first customer that we ended up being Christmas card pen pals for like 4 years following. And so every year I would send her a card with like some tea of our newest blends. And she somehow along her own life journey got inspired to start her own business in custom jewelry. So she would start sending me samples of her custom jewelry in the mail at Christmas time. And here we are like 6 years later, and she's still a very loyal customer. The thing I would tell anybody who's considering starting a business, don't worry about problems that don't exist yet. This is my biggest thing that I try to preach, because we find ourselves getting in the weeds to the point of paralyzation. I don't know if that's a word. Okay, we'll pretend it's a word. We find ourselves getting paralyzed by what if this, what if that? Well, what if isn't here yet? What if isn't even impacting you? So in the case of, people who are starting in the food space, they're like, I need to get all of this insurance and just to start prototypes. And it's like, no, you don't. Like, just get started. Do you think those lovely older women who are making raspberry jam with like the raspberries in their garden, like are thinking about all this complex insurance? Like, no, like they're just making their product and then going with it. So get out there, make your product, start your business. Don't worry about problems that don't happen yet. And, of course you want to be able to mitigate any potential risks and issues along the way, but don't bog yourself in the weeds in the meantime. Like, just get started.